I am Ashley, 37 years old, and 10 years ago my sister Rachel dropped off her 4 children at my apartment for what she called just the weekend. That weekend turned into a decade of me raising her kids as my own. Now, after building a stable home and legally adopting them, Rachel has suddenly reappeared with shocking accusations that I kidnapped her children and alienated them from her. The betrayal cuts deeper than anything I could have imagined. Before I tell you how my own sister tried to destroy the family I rebuilt from her ashes, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and subscribe if you have ever had to step up when someone you love stepped out. Before my life changed forever, I was a dedicated pediatric nurse with a comfortable one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. My days were structured around 12-hour shifts at Children's Memorial Hospital, occasional dates with guys who never quite felt right, and Sunday brunches with friends. I had always loved children but had put my own family plans on hold while building my career. At 37, I figured I still had time to find the right partner and maybe have a child or two of my own. My sister Rachel, 2 years younger than me, had taken a completely different path. By 25, she had 4 children with 3 different fathers. Madison was her oldest at 8, a serious little girl with Rachel's auburn hair and an old soul. The twins, Tyler and Noah, were 6, identical in appearance with their father's blonde curls but completely different in personality. Noah was quiet and bookish while Tyler was a bundle of energy who could never sit still. Emma, just 3 years old, was the baby of the family with big brown eyes that could melt the coldest heart. Rachel had always struggled with substance abuse issues since her late teens. Our parents had tried everything: rehab programs, therapy, tough love, enabling, but nothing seemed to stick. When she became pregnant with Madison, she stayed clean for almost the entire pregnancy, giving us all hope that motherhood would be her salvation, and for a while it seemed to work. She got a job as a receptionist, rented a small house, and seemed to be managing. But by the time Emma was born 8 years later, Rachel was back to her old patterns, cycling through periods of sobriety followed by devastating relapses. Her relationships were equally chaotic. Madison's father had been Rachel's high school sweetheart who joined the military and was deployed overseas shortly after Madison was born. They lost touch, and Rachel never pursued child support. The twins' father had been in the picture until they were about 2, providing some stability until he caught Rachel cheating with Emma's future father, a bartender at the local dive where Rachel spent too many evenings. Despite all this, I tried to maintain a relationship with my nieces and nephews. I would take them for weekends occasionally to give Rachel a break, bring them birthday and Christmas gifts, and attend school events when Rachel was too busy to show up. I loved those kids fiercely but was careful not to overstep. They had a mother, even if she was imperfect. It was a rainy Friday in October when everything changed. I had just gotten home from a particularly difficult shift involving a child with leukemia when my doorbell rang at nearly 10 p.m. There stood Rachel, looking jittery and thin, with all 4 children in tow. Madison clutched a small backpack. The twins each had a plastic grocery bag with what looked like hastily stuffed clothes, and little Emma was asleep in Rachel's arms with tear tracks on her chubby cheeks. "I need a huge favor," Rachel said, pushing past me into my apartment without waiting for a response. "I have to go out of town for a job opportunity, just for the weekend. I will be back Sunday night, Monday morning at the latest." The children looked exhausted and confused. Madison's expression broke my heart. She had the resigned look of a child who had been through this routine before. "Rachel, it is 10 o'clock at night. These kids should be in bed. What kind of job opportunity requires you to leave town in the middle of the night?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level so as not to further upset the children. "It is a networking thing. Could lead to a real career, Ash. I cannot pass it up." Her eyes wouldn't meet mine, a telltale sign she wasn't being truthful. "Everything they need is in these bags. Madison knows their routines. I have to go now or I will miss my ride." Before I could ask any more questions, she deposited a sleeping Emma in my arms, quickly kissed each child on the top of their head, and was out the door with a breezy, "Thanks sis, love you." That night was chaos. My one-bedroom apartment wasn't equipped for 4 children. I gave the kids my bed, made a pallet on the floor for myself, and tried to soothe their confusion and fear. Madison helped get the younger one settled, clearly accustomed to taking on a parental role. "It's okay," she told me with eyes too wise for her age. "Mom does this sometimes. She'll be back when she's ready." In the morning, while the children ate the cereal I'd fortunately had in my pantry, I found a handwritten note that had been stuffed in Emma's diaper bag. "Ashley, I need to find myself. I'm suffocating. Take care of them for me. I'll call when I can. R." My heart sank as I realized this wasn't just a weekend. I tried calling Rachel repeatedly, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I checked her apartment later that day and found it in disarray but with no sign of where she might have gone. Her landlord informed me that she was already 3 months behind on rent. The next days were a blur of panic and improvisation. I called into work, using precious vacation days while I tried to figure out what to do. I bought air mattresses, children's clothes, and groceries. I contacted the kids' schools to explain the situation as best I could. Madison told me which school she and the twins attended, and I discovered Emma went to a daycare 3 days a week when Rachel picked up extra shifts. A week passed with no word from Rachel. Then 2 weeks. I had to return to work, so I arranged a modified schedule, working 3 12-hour shifts instead of 5 8-hour shifts, and found a babysitter for those days. My savings account dwindled rapidly. After a month, I contacted social services for guidance and was assigned a caseworker named Stephanie, a compassionate woman in her 50s who had seen it all. She helped me navigate the process of obtaining temporary guardianship so I could make medical and educational decisions for the children. She also connected me with resources for emergency assistance. "Has this happened before?" Stephanie asked during our first meeting. Madison, who insisted on being present, answered before I could. "Not for this long, usually just a few days, and we stay with different people. Sometimes her friends, sometimes our neighbors." The matter-of-fact way she described being shuffled around broke my heart. The hardest part was watching the children process their abandonment in different ways. Madison became my fiercest ally and junior partner, helping with the younger kids but occasionally breaking down in private, allowing herself rare moments of being just an 8-year-old girl who missed her mom. The twins acted out at school, with Noah becoming withdrawn and Tyler becoming aggressive. Emma, too young to fully understand, would wake up crying for mama and then cling to me desperately throughout the day. 3 months after she left, I received a text message from Rachel from an unknown number. "Kids okay? I'm in Arizona, found a job, will send money soon." No questions about how I was managing 4 children in a 1-bedroom apartment, no acknowledgement of the chaos she'd left behind. No timeline for her return, and unsurprisingly no money ever arrived. I replied asking when she was coming back. 3 days later she responded with just "not ready yet, thank you for taking care of them, you're better at it anyway." And just like that I became the de facto mother to 4 traumatized children who still slept with their shoes on some nights, afraid they might need to leave in a hurry. By the 3-month mark of Rachel's absence, it became clear that my 1-bedroom apartment was not sustainable for 5 people. The air mattresses took up every inch of floor space, privacy was non-existent, the neighbors had started complaining about the noise. I needed to find a more permanent solution. With Stephanie's help, I found a 3-bedroom apartment in a slightly less desirable neighborhood but within the same school district. It stretched my budget to the breaking point, but I couldn't bear the thought of the children changing schools after everything else they'd lost. Madison and Emma would share 1 bedroom, the twins another, and I would take the smallest room. I signed a 1-year lease, a terrifying commitment given that Rachel could theoretically return at any moment. Moving day was both exciting and emotional. The children helped pack their few belongings, and we visited a thrift store to find additional furniture. A local church group that Stephanie had connected me with donated beds, dressers, and a dining table. As we arranged the furniture in our new place, I caught Madison sitting alone in her new room, clutching a photo of Rachel. "Do you think she's ever coming back?" she asked me, her voice small. I sat beside her, choosing my words carefully. "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope she does when she's feeling better, but no matter what happens, you have a home with me for as long as you need it." My career took a hit as I adjusted to my new reality. I switched from full-time to part-time nursing, working 3 shifts a week while the children were in school. My supervisor, a mother of 3 herself, was understanding but couldn't hold my position indefinitely. I took a demotion to accommodate my new schedule, losing both status and income at a time when my expenses had quadrupled. Financial strain became a constant companion. I applied for every assistance program available, but as a registered nurse I often made just enough to disqualify us from many benefits while still struggling to make ends meet. I became an expert at stretching groceries, finding free community events for entertainment, and scouring thrift stores for clothing and toys. The legal process for establishing temporary guardianship was complicated by Rachel's absence. Without her formal consent, we had to go through additional steps, proving abandonment and demonstrating that the children's welfare was best served in my care. The family court judge, a stern woman with kind eyes, granted temporary guardianship for 6 months with reviews to follow. Each child processed the new living arrangement differently. Madison took on too much responsibility, constantly trying to minimize their impact on my life. I would find her doing laundry at midnight or making lunches before I woke up. The twins fought constantly, competing for attention in their new environment. Noah would hide books under his mattress, hoarding knowledge like a security blanket, while Tyler broke 3 lamps in the first month, testing boundaries and perhaps hoping for rejection that would confirm his fears. Emma, at just 3, attached to me with the ferocious need of a child who had learned that adults disappear. She would scream in terror if I moved out of her sight, even to use the bathroom. Nighttime was the worst. She would wake with nightmares, calling for Rachel, then clutching me as if I too might vanish by morning. Finding support became essential to our survival. My neighbor Deborah, a retired teacher, offered to watch the children occasionally so I could run errands or simply take a shower in peace. My friends, initially shocked by my sudden family, rallied with hand-me-downs and occasional home-cooked meals. My parents, who lived in Florida, sent money when they could and came to visit over Thanksgiving, bringing stability and grandparental love that the children desperately needed. At the children's elementary school, I met Brian, a single father whose daughter was in the same class as the twins. He noticed me struggling to corral all 4 kids at pickup one day and offered to help. That simple kindness, holding Emma while I tied Noah's shoe and prevented Tyler from running into the parking lot, was the first time someone had seen my struggle without judgment. Brian and I began coordinating playdates, which evolved into family dinners. His daughter Lily was the same age as the twins, and watching the children play together brought moments of normalcy to our chaotic lives. He never pushed for details about our situation but listened when I needed to vent. His friendship became a lifeline during those first challenging months. Christmas arrived just 10 weeks after Rachel left. I was determined to make it special despite our limited resources. We decorated a small tree with handmade ornaments, baked cookies from scratch, and I worked extra shifts to buy each child one special gift. On Christmas Eve, as we sat in our pajamas reading holiday stories, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Merry Xmas. Kiss the kids for me, miss them." No questions about how they were doing, no offers to speak with them, just enough contact to assuage her guilt without taking any responsibility. I showed the message to Madison, who read it with a stony expression before asking, "Can we call her back?" I dialed the number, heart pounding, but it went straight to voicemail. We tried 3 more times throughout the evening with the same result. The younger children were devastated, but Madison just nodded knowingly. "She always does this," she whispered to me later. "Gets in touch just enough so we don't forget her, then disappears again." That night, after all the children were finally asleep, I sat alone in the glow of the Christmas tree lights and allowed myself to cry for the first time in weeks. I cried for the children who deserve so much more, for Rachel and whatever demons drove her to abandon her babies, and for myself and the life I had not chosen but now couldn't imagine giving up. As the first year without Rachel drew to a close, we celebrated small victories. All 4 children were maintaining passing grades. Emma had gone a full week without a nighttime meltdown. I had managed to save $200 in an emergency fund. We weren't thriving yet, but we were surviving, one day at a time. On the 1-year anniversary of the night Rachel left, I baked a cake, not to celebrate her absence, but to mark our resilience. "This is for us," I told the children as we gathered around the table, "for getting through the hardest year together. I am so proud of each of you." Madison, now 9, looked at me with serious eyes. "Are we a forever family now?" she asked. "We are a family for as long as you need one," I promised, not knowing yet how that promise would be tested in the years to come. 2 years after Rachel walked out of our lives, our makeshift family had found its rhythm. The temporary guardianship had been extended multiple times, with the court recognizing the stability I provided. The children were thriving in school, with regular routines and consistent expectations helping to heal some of their early trauma. My friendship with Brian had deepened into something more meaningful. Our family dinners became a weekly tradition, then twice weekly, until we were spending most of our free time together. His daughter Lily had become like a cousin to my 4, especially close with the twins who were her age. Brian understood my situation in a way few others could: the sudden thrust into single parenthood, the financial struggles, the constant balancing act between work and children's needs. One rainy Saturday, when the kids were building a blanket fort in the living room, Brian took me aside in the kitchen. "I have been thinking," he said quietly. "My lease is up next month. Your place is cramped with 5 people. My house has 4 bedrooms and a backyard. What if we considered moving in together, not just as roommates but as partners trying to build something real?" The practical benefits were obvious: shared expenses, more space, another adult to help with childcare, But I hesitated, worried about disrupting the children's hard-won stability. What if it doesn't work out between us? The kids have already lost one parent. Brian didn't push, but over the following weeks he included the children in the conversation. How would you feel about living in a house with a backyard? He asked them over pizza one night. What if Lily was around all the time? The children's enthusiasm was overwhelming. Madison, practical as always, immediately started planning bedroom arrangements. The twins were ecstatic about the backyard. Emma, now 5, simply climbed into Brian's lap and asked, "Would you read me bedtime stories every night?" 3 months later, we moved into Brian's 4-bedroom house. The transition wasn't without challenges, establishing new routines, negotiating shared spaces, blending parenting styles. But watching the children run through sprinklers in the backyard that first summer, hearing their laughter echo through a home with enough space for everyone, I knew we'd made the right decision. As our relationship solidified, Brian and I began discussing legal options. My temporary guardianship was stable but still subject to Rachel's potential return. Brian suggested looking into more permanent solutions. "Have you considered adoption?" he asked one night after the children were asleep. "It would give them security and you legal protection if Rachel ever reappears." The idea both thrilled and terrified me. Adoption felt like a betrayal of Rachel. Despite her abandonment, it also meant acknowledging that she might never return, something I had been careful not to verbalize around the children. I decided to broach the subject with Madison first, now 10 and increasingly mature in her outlook. "I want to talk to you about something important," I told her during our special monthly lunch date, a tradition I had started to give each child one-on-one time. "You want to adopt us," she said matter-of-factly, surprising me with her perception. "I heard you and Brian talking about it." "How would you feel about that?" I asked cautiously. Madison stirred her milkshake thoughtfully. "Would it mean Mom couldn't take us back suddenly if she decided she wanted to?" "It would mean I would be your legal parent, alongside your mom. She would still be your mother, but I would have the right to make decisions about your care." "I think you should do it," she said firmly. "The little ones need to know we're staying, and," she hesitated, "I need to know too." The legal process began with attempting to contact Rachel for consent. I sent certified letters to her last known addresses, worked with a private investigator to try to locate her, and posted legal notices in newspapers. The sporadic text messages had dwindled to birthday acknowledgments and occasional holiday greetings, always from different numbers that went unanswered when we replied. 6 months into the adoption process, we received the first direct opposition from Rachel. A curt email arrived: "Heard you're trying to take my kids legally now. Not gonna happen. They're mine." My lawyer advised me that Rachel would need to demonstrate her commitment to parenting by appearing in court, establishing a residence, and showing she could provide stability. The email was followed by 2 weeks of daily texts to my phone, promises to return, accusations that I had stolen her children, then silence again when the court date for her to appear came and went without her presence. In the midst of this legal uncertainty, Brian proposed. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture, but a quiet moment in our kitchen after a chaotic family dinner. "We're already a family in all the ways that matter," he said, holding out a simple ring. "Let's make it official." Our wedding was a small backyard affair with the children as our attendants. Madison was my maid of honor, Emma our flower girl, and the twins shared ring-bearer duties. Lily stood proudly beside her father. As we exchanged vows, I looked at our blended family and felt a certainty I had never experienced before: this was where I belonged. The adoption process continued slowly. Rachel's initial opposition faded into disinterest once again. She missed court appointments, failed to respond to legal notices, and eventually stopped contacting us altogether for several months. During this time, we had many family discussions about what adoption would mean. The children had complex feelings about legally changing their relationship to me. Madison was the most supportive, seeing the practical benefits of security. The twins were confused, with Noah worrying that forgetting their mother's last name meant forgetting her entirely. Emma, who had the fewest memories of Rachel, was the most enthusiastic about officially becoming my daughter. "But I already call you Mommy," she said, puzzled by the legal discussions. "This would just make it official on paper," I explained. "Like how we have your birth certificate that says you were born to your first mommy." "Can I have a new birth certificate that says you're my mommy?" she asked. "Not exactly, but we'll have adoption papers that are just as important," I told her, heart aching at her simple desire for permanence. After many delays and complications, we finally sent the adoption consent papers to Rachel's last known address. I included a personal letter explaining that adoption didn't mean erasing her from the children's lives. but providing them with the security they deserved while leaving the door open for her healthy involvement in the future. Weeks passed with no response. My lawyer advised that we could proceed without her consent given the extensive documentation of abandonment, but the process would take longer and face more scrutiny. We decided to move forward. Throughout this period, I was careful to keep any traces of Rachel present in our home: photos in the children's rooms, the few letters she had sent, stories about positive memories when appropriate. Despite everything, I wanted the children to know their mother had loved them in her way, even if that love wasn't enough to keep her with them. I noticed Rachel in the children daily: Madison's determined chin, the twins' infectious laugh, Emma's artistic talent. These genetic echoes were bittersweet reminders of the complicated bonds of family. Nearly 3 years after Rachel left, we received a brief social media message from her: saw the court papers. I understand. Just want them to be happy. Congratulations on your marriage. It was the closest thing to blessing we would receive, and though part of me wanted to rage at her for abandoning these amazing children, another part felt profound pity for all she was missing as they grew. 5 years after that rainy night when Rachel dropped off her frightened children at my door, our blended family had found its stride. Brian and I celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary. The house that had once felt enormous now seemed perfectly sized for our active family of 7. Madison had entered her teenage years with the expected turbulence but maintained the maturity that had been forced upon her too early. At 13, she was a straight-A student with a passion for debate club and dreams of becoming an attorney. I want to help kids like us, she told me one night while I helped her prepare for a school competition. Though she rarely spoke of Rachel anymore, identity questions sometimes surfaced, especially as she navigated the social complexities of middle school. Do you think I'll end up like her? She asked me once after learning about genetics in science class. Is it in my DNA to leave people? We are more than our genetics, I assured her. You get to choose who you become, and you have already shown more commitment to your siblings than many adults show in a lifetime. The twins, now 11, had developed in dramatically different directions despite their identical appearance. Noah had tested into the gifted program, devouring books about space and engineering. Tyler had struggled academically but found his place on the soccer field, his excess energy channeled into athletics. They still shared a bedroom by choice, though we had offered them separate spaces as they grew older. Emma, at 8, had no meaningful memories of life before our family. To her, I had always been mom, Brian had always been dad, and Lily had always been her sister. She knew about Rachel in the abstract way children know about distant relatives, through stories and photographs rather than lived experience. Her attachment to me remained fierce but had evolved from the desperate clinging of early childhood to the secure bond of a child who trusted in her parents' permanence. Rachel's contact had become increasingly sporadic over the years. Where once she might text on all the children's birthdays, she now acknowledged only Christmas and occasionally Madison's birthday, as if the effort of remembering 4 separate dates was too much. Years could pass between communications. One particularly difficult moment came when Tyler won a regional soccer championship at age 9. His team's victory was featured in the local newspaper, and I had tagged Rachel in the social media post about it on the off chance she might see it. 3 weeks later, she liked the post without comment. When I told Tyler, his response was a shrug and "who cares? Mom and Dad were there, that's what matters." His casual dismissal of Rachel as relevant to his triumph while claiming Brian and me as his real parents brought complicated emotions: pride that we had given him security, guilt that Rachel was becoming a footnote in her children's lives, relief that the children were healing from her abandonment. As the children grew, they participated in numerous activities that Rachel missed: school plays, sports tournaments, academic competitions, piano recitals. I documented everything meticulously, maintaining digital albums that I occasionally shared with Rachel. Though I rarely received acknowledgement, it felt important to leave the door open, even as it seemed increasingly unlikely she would walk through it. The legal adoption process had dragged on for years, complicated by Rachel's initial objection followed by complete disengagement. Finally, when Madison was 12, the twins 10, and Emma 7, we received notice that the court date for finalizing the adoption had been set. "This doesn't mean your birth mother stops being your mother," I explained to the children as we discussed the upcoming court date. "It just means that legally, I have the right to take care of you forever no matter what." "And no one can take us away?" Emma asked, a fear that still surfaced occasionally in her nightmares. "No one," I promised. The adoption day itself was both solemn and joyful, the children dressed in their best clothes, and the judge, the same compassionate woman who had granted my initial temporary guardianship, spoke directly to each child, asking if they understood what was happening and if this was what they wanted. Madison, articulate as always, said, "Our first mom gave us life, our forever mom gave us a home. We need both, but right now we need the home most." After 5 years of uncertainty, the children legally took Brian's and my last name. We celebrated with a party in our backyard, complete with a cake that read "Forever Family" and gifts symbolizing our commitment, lockets for the girls with family photos inside, engraved watches for the boys. That evening I sent Rachel a message with photos from the celebration. "The adoption was finalized today. The children are doing well. You're always welcome to be part of their lives in a healthy way. They know you love them." To my surprise, she responded within hours, "They look happy. You did what I couldn't. Thank you for loving them better than I could." It was the most genuine communication we had received from her in years, offering a glimmer of hope that perhaps she had found some peace with the situation. The following years brought more growth and achievements. Madison entered high school with honors. The twins navigated the transition to middle school, Noah excelling academically while Tyler became a star athlete. Emma blossomed as an artist, her drawings covering our refrigerator and occasionally winning school contests. Brian and I settled into the comfortable rhythms of long-term partnership, navigating the challenges of raising 5 children with humor and mutual support. I had returned to full-time nursing once all the children were in school, and we had achieved a level of financial stability that allowed for family vacations and college savings accounts. Our community recognized our unique family journey when I was nominated for a local Mother of the Year award by Madison's English teacher, who had been moved by an essay Madison wrote about found family, standing on the small stage at the community center. Accepting a modest plaque with all 5 children and Brian cheering from the front row, I felt a sense of accomplishment that transcended any professional achievement. "Family isn't about biology," I said in my brief acceptance speech. "It's about showing up, day after day, through tantrums and triumphs, homework struggles and growth spurts. It's about being the constant in a child's life, whether you share their DNA or not." What I didn't say, what I couldn't articulate publicly, was how much I still worried about Rachel, how I sometimes woke in the night wondering where she was and if she was safe, how I still kept a small box of mementos to give the children if she ever truly returned to their lives. As we approached the 10-year mark since Rachel's departure, we had created a stable, loving home. The children were thriving, their early trauma largely healed through consistency and care. We had no way of knowing that the security we had so carefully built was about to be shaken to its core. 10 years, 2 months, and 18 days after Rachel left her children with me, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was a Sunday afternoon. Brian was grilling in the backyard. The twins were playing video games, Madison was doing homework at the kitchen table, and Emma was painting at her easel on the patio. The peaceful domesticity of the scene made the caller's identity all the more jarring. "Ashley, it's Rachel. I'm in town. I'd like to see the kids." My hand trembled as I processed her voice, familiar yet strange after so many years. "Rachel, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, better than fine actually. I've been clean for 4 years. I have a steady job, an apartment. I've been in therapy. I want to see my children." We arranged for her to come to the house that evening after dinner. I gathered the family to prepare them, unsure how each child would react to this sudden reappearance. Madison, now 18 and preparing for college, received the news with stoic caution. "I'll be civil, but I'm not calling her mom," she stated flatly. The twins, 16 and in the full throes of adolescence, had different reactions. Noah expressed intellectual curiosity about the woman he barely remembered, while Tyler immediately asked if he could go to a friend's house instead. I gently insisted everyone needed to be present, at least for this first meeting. Emma, 13 and with no real memories of Rachel, was the most confused. "Why does she want to see us now? Where has she been all this time?" Her questions broke my heart because I had no satisfactory answers. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Standing on our porch was a woman who simultaneously was and wasn't the Rachel I remembered. Her hair was styled in a professional bob instead of her former wild curls. She wore a modest dress and minimal makeup. She looked healthy, clear-eyed, and terrified. "They've gotten so big," she whispered as she entered our living room, where the children waited with Brian supportively positioned behind them. The reunion was awkward and emotional. Madison maintained a polite distance, shaking Rachel's hand like she was greeting a stranger. The twins were cautiously curious, answering her questions about school and hobbies with short responses. Emma hid partially behind me, eyeing this unknown woman with suspicion. Rachel didn't push. She seemed to understand the fragility of the moment. bringing small gifts that showed she had made an effort to learn about their current interests: a book on astrophysics for Noah, a soccer jersey for Tyler, art supplies for Emma, and a college preparatory guide for Madison. "I know I can't make up for 10 years in one visit," she said as the evening drew to a close, "but I'd like to try to be part of your lives again if you'll let me. Maybe we could start with occasional visits?" Looking at the children's faces, seeing their confusion and wariness, I nodded cautiously. "We can take it slow, maybe start with supervised visits here at the house." Despite my internal alarm bells, why now? After 10 years, I couldn't justify denying the children access to their biological mother if she had truly changed and they were open to the relationship. I reminded myself that I had always tried to keep the door open for Rachel's healthy return. The first few visits went surprisingly well. Rachel came every other weekend, bringing thoughtful gifts and asking appropriate questions about the children's lives. She didn't try to force physical affection or make grand promises. She simply showed up consistently for the first time in their lives. Madison maintained her emotional distance but engaged in polite conversation. The twins gradually warmed up, especially when Rachel showed genuine interest in Noah's science projects and attended one of Tyler's soccer games. Emma remained the most reserved, clinging to me whenever Rachel was present. After 2 months of successful visits, Rachel asked if she could take the children out for dinner without Brian and me present. The younger three looked to Madison, who shrugged and said, "I guess that would be okay." The dinner apparently went well, with the children returning home full of stories about the fancy restaurant Rachel had taken them to and the funny waiter who had performed magic tricks at their table. Over the following weeks, Rachel gradually asked for more time: a day trip to the zoo, an afternoon at the movies, eventually an overnight visit at her new apartment across town. Each time I checked with the children before agreeing, and each time they returned seeming happy about the expanding relationship. 6 months into Rachel's return, I began noticing subtle changes. Madison mentioned that Rachel had told her she always planned to come back when she got her life together. Noah reported that Rachel had shown them old photos and talked about when they were a family. Before everything went wrong, Emma asked me why Rachel kept calling me by my first name with a strange emphasis, as if it wasn't really my name. One afternoon, while helping Emma with homework, I noticed her browser history included searches for custody reversal and parental rights after adoption. My stomach dropped. I checked the browsing time. It had been during Rachel's last visit with the children at our home. That same evening, I discovered a pamphlet in Tyler's backpack about reunification therapy for estranged parents and children, with Rachel's handwriting in the margins. When questioned, Tyler shrugged uncomfortably. "Mom gave it to me. She said she's working with a family lawyer to make things right." Alarmed, I spoke with Brian, who suggested we have a direct conversation with Rachel about her intentions. We invited her to coffee, just the 3 adults, away from the children. "I appreciate the relationship you're building with the kids," I began carefully, "but I'm concerned about some things they've mentioned. Are you discussing custody arrangements with them?" Rachel's friendly demeanor shifted instantly. "They're my children. Of course I want them back." "Rachel, they've been with us for 10 years, Brian said gently. "This is the only home Emma really remembers. The boys have been with us since they were 6. Even Madison has lived with us longer than she lived with you." "Because Ashley took them," Rachel snapped, her eyes flashing with a familiar volatility that sent chills down my spine. "She took advantage of me when I was at my lowest. I just needed some time to get myself together." "You left them with me," I reminded her, struggling to keep my voice level. "You chose to leave for 10 years. I was sick, I had a disease, and instead of helping me, you took my children and turned them against me." Rachel's voice rose, attracting glances from nearby tables. "You always wanted them for yourself. You were jealous that I had children and you didn't." The accusation was so ludicrous I almost laughed, but the genuine rage in Rachel's eyes stopped me. This wasn't a rational discussion anymore. "Rachel, we've always kept your memory alive for the kids," Brian tried to reason. "We've shown them photos, told them stories. We've never spoken badly about you." "Then why do they call you Mom and Dad?" she demanded, jabbing a finger at us. "Why does Emma barely remember me? Why does Madison treat me like a stranger?" "Because you were absent for 10 years of their lives," I said softly. "Children need consistency. They attach to the adults who care for them day in and day out." Rachel stood abruptly, gathering her purse. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer. I'm getting my children back, all of them." 3 days later, I discovered Rachel had posted a lengthy diatribe on social media, claiming I had manipulated her into giving up her children, that I had prevented her from contacting them, and that I had brainwashed them against her. The post included childhood photos of the children with her, carefully selected to show happy moments that created a false narrative of her parenting. My sister kidnapped my 4 children 10 years ago when I was struggling with addiction, the post read. Now that I'm healthy and strong enough to be their mother again, she wouldn't let them come home. Please share to help me fight this injustice. The post was gaining traction, with sympathetic comments from people who didn't know the full story. Some of our own acquaintances reached out, confused by Rachel's version of events that contradicted everything they had witnessed over the years. 2 weeks later, official papers arrived by certified mail. Rachel was filing for custody of all 4 children, claiming I had alienated them from her and had taken advantage of her temporary inability to parent, despite Emma being fully adopted and the boy's adoption having been finalized years ago. She was challenging the entire legal framework of our family. The accusations were like physical blows. After everything we had survived together, after all the nights I had held crying children, all the school projects I had helped complete, all the nightmares I had soothed, to be accused of kidnapping and alienation was beyond comprehension. The children were distraught when we explained what was happening, especially when we had to tell them that contact with Rachel would be supervised by court officials until the case was resolved. She told me she just wanted to know us again, Madison said, tears streaming down her face for the first time in years. She promised she wasn't trying to mess up our lives. Tyler punched a wall, requiring a trip to the emergency room for his bruised knuckles. Noah withdrew into books, barely speaking for days. Emma began having nightmares again, waking up screaming that someone was trying to take her away. As the community began taking sides based on Rachel's increasingly public campaign, I found myself explaining our family history to school counselors, neighbors, even some friends who had only known us during the stable years and had never witnessed the aftermath of Rachel's abandonment. The most painful moment came when I discovered Rachel had told Emma, during what was supposed to be a supervised phone call, that I had kept her from her real mommy all these years because I couldn't have children of my own. Emma, confused and upset, asked me if I had stolen her. Holding my sobbing 13-year-old, I realized the depth of the battle ahead, not just legal, but for the hearts and trust of the children I had raised as my own. The day after receiving Rachel's custody petition, I contacted Jessica Martinez, a family law attorney specializing in complex adoption cases. Her office was warm but professional, with children's artwork framing her law degrees on the wall, a promising sign she understood the human element of family law. This is an unusual case, Jessica admitted after reviewing our documentation. The older children's adoptions were finalized years ago, and Emma's was completed when she was still very young. Rachel signed away her parental rights, albeit after years of legal maneuvering. Typically, that would be the end of the story. So why is this happening? Brian asked, his hand squeezing mine supportively. Your sister-in-law is claiming she was coerced and that you deliberately alienated the children from her, Jessica explained. It's a long shot legally, but custody cases can become complicated when biological parents make these claims. Courts generally want to preserve biological connections when possible. She abandoned them for 10 years, I said, my voice cracking. 10 years where she barely called, never sent child support, missed birthdays and Christmases and first days of school. How can that be ignored? It won't be, Jessica assured me. We have extensive documentation of the abandonment, the sporadic contact, and your consistent efforts to maintain her presence in their lives, but we need to prepare for an emotional battle. Rachel has hired Lawrence Bentley. He's known for aggressive tactics in reunification cases. The first court appearance was a preliminary hearing to establish temporary arrangements while the case proceeded. Rachel arrived with her attorney and a man she introduced as her husband of 2 years, Robert. I was shocked to learn she had married without ever mentioning it to the children during her months of visits. Rachel's attorney painted her as a recovered addict who had turned her life around, a mother desperate to reconnect with the children who had been kept from her. He glossed over the 10-year absence, characterizing it as a painful but necessary separation while Rachel healed herself to become the mother her children deserved. Our attorney methodically presented the timeline the night Rachel left, the note in her handwriting stating she needed to find herself, the years of minimal contact, the missed court dates during the original guardianship and adoption proceedings, and the children's established lives in our home. The judge ordered a series of evaluations, home studies for both households, psychological assessments for all adults involved, and interviews with the children conducted by a court-appointed advocate. Most significantly, he maintained the current living arrangement, with the children remaining in our home while allowing Rachel supervised visitation twice monthly. Outside the courtroom, Rachel confronted me. "You think you've won, but those are my children. They have my blood. No judge is going to keep a mother from her children when she's clean and stable." "This isn't about winning," I told her warily. "It's about what's best for Madison, Noah, Tyler, and Emma. They're people, Rachel, not possessions." "They're my people," she hissed before her husband led her away. The following weeks were a whirlwind of appointments and investigations. Social workers inspected both homes. Psychologists interviewed all parties. The children met repeatedly with their advocate, a kind but firm woman named Carolyn who specialized in high-conflict custody cases. Madison, legally an adult at 18, was technically free from the court's jurisdiction but chose to participate in all proceedings. "They're my siblings," she told the judge firmly. "What happens to them happens to me." Her testimony was powerful in its straightforward honesty. She described life before I took them in inconsistent meals, being left alone to care for her younger siblings at age 8, the revolving door of her mother's boyfriends, and the fear she felt each time Rachel disappeared for days. "Ashley, Mom never said bad things about Rachel," Madison testified. "She helped us write cards on Mother's Day, kept photos of Rachel in our rooms, and always answered our questions honestly. The only person who abandoned us was Rachel herself." The twins at 16 were also articulate about their preferences. Noah methodically listed the milestones Rachel had missed and the ways Brian and I had supported their development. Tyler was more emotional, describing his confusion when Rachel suddenly reappeared expecting to be called Mom when that title had been earned by someone else years ago. Emma's interview was conducted privately due to her age, but Carolyn later told us that Emma had been clear about considering Brian and me her parents in her heart and in real life. As the legal proceedings dragged on, we discovered Rachel's motivations were more complicated than maternal longing. Through discovery, our lawyer uncovered that the children had inherited a substantial sum from my parents' estate when they died 2 years earlier. The money was in trusts for their college education, but Rachel would have access to it as their guardian if custody were transferred. Additionally, her new husband Robert turned out to be the driving force behind the custody battle. A search of court records revealed he had been involved in 2 previous custody disputes with ex-partners, both with financial implications. Meanwhile, Rachel's social media campaign intensified. She shared carefully edited videos of emotional moments from her supervised visits, photos of the children as babies in her arms, and heart-wrenching posts about a mother's love. Some local media picked up the story, presenting it as a recovering addict fighting to reunite with her children. The public scrutiny was excruciating. Strangers left comments on my social media accounts calling me a child snatcher. Some parents at the children's schools repeated gossip in carpool lines. Emma came home crying one day because a classmate had told her she was living with kidnappers. Through it all, our community rallied around us. The children's teachers provided statements about their academic and social progress under our care. Neighbors organized meal trains to support us through the endless legal appointments. Brian's employer offered flexible scheduling so he could attend every hearing. Most touchingly, families we had known throughout the years came forward with documentation of Rachel's absence, photos of birthday parties she had missed, videos of school performances where Brian and I cheered from the front row, text messages where I had invited Rachel to events with no response. Stephanie, the original social worker who had helped us navigate those first chaotic months, came out of retirement to testify. She brought her meticulous case notes documenting Rachel's lack of contact, my efforts to locate her, and the children's gradual adjustment to their new reality. In 27 years of social work, I never saw a case handled with more grace, Stephanie told the court. Ashley opened the door for Rachel's return at every opportunity while simultaneously providing the children with the stability they desperately needed. During the discovery process, I remembered the handwritten note Rachel had left the night she abandoned the children. After hours of searching through old boxes, I found it preserved in a family album, tangible proof of her voluntary departure contradicting her current claims of coercion. As the case built, Rachel's attorney proposed a settlement. She would drop the custody claim for the 3 older children if we would agree to shared custody of Emma. The suggestion that we would willingly divide the siblings was so offensive that even our measured attorney responded with uncharacteristic emotion. "These children have already experienced one traumatic separation," Jessica told opposing counsel. "My clients will not facilitate another. They are a family unit, all or none." The final hearing was scheduled after 6 exhausting months of legal battles. The courtroom was tense as the judge reviewed the extensive documentation from both sides. Rachel sat with her husband, dressed conservatively and projecting calm confidence. Brian and I held hands, physically and emotionally drained from the ordeal. The children waited in a separate room, having already provided their testimony and preferences. Madison had insisted on being in the courtroom as an adult, sitting directly behind us in silent support. The judge, a silver-haired woman who had presided over the entire case, looked up from her notes and removed her reading glasses. Family court's primary concern is always the best interest of the children, she began. While biology creates a presumption in favor of natural parents, that presumption can be overcome by evidence of abandonment and the establishment of new healthy attachments. She continued, addressing Rachel directly, Ms. Campbell, your recovery is commendable, and the court recognizes your desire to reconnect with your children. However, parenting is not a right that can be set aside and reclaimed at convenience. It is a continuous responsibility. Turning to us, she added, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, the court acknowledges the stable, loving home you have provided for these children through extremely difficult circumstances. The evidence shows consistent efforts on your part to preserve their biological connections while meeting their daily needs for a decade. After reviewing the specific evidence and legal principles, the judge delivered her ruling our adoptions would stand, and Rachel's petition for custody was denied. She would be granted limited, supervised visitation rights that could potentially expand over time if she demonstrated consistent, positive involvement. As the judge's gavel fell, I felt a decade of tension release from my shoulders. Madison's arms wrapped around me from behind, and I turned to embrace her as tears of relief flowed freely. Rachel's reaction was a study in contradictions. She sobbed loudly, clinging to her husband while glaring at me with naked hatred. Outside the courtroom, she made a brief statement to the reporters who had followed the case. This isn't over. No court can sever the bond between a mother and her children. But legally it was over. The judge's ruling was clear and comprehensive, unlikely to be overturned on appeal. The children's preference to remain with us, combined with the extensive documentation of Rachel's abandonment and our consistent care, had prevailed over biology. That evening we gathered our children, all four of them, plus Lily, who had been a steadfast sister throughout the ordeal, and told them they were home for good. The relief in their eyes was the only vindication I needed. In the quiet aftermath of the court battle, our family began the delicate process of healing. The judge's ruling had confirmed what we already knew in our hearts. We were a family bound by love and shared experience rather than merely by blood, yet the emotional toll of having that bond questioned had left invisible scars on all of us. Rachel's final outburst in court had triggered a protective order barring her from direct contact with the children outside the court-mandated supervised visitation schedule. Her social media campaign gradually faded as supporters moved on to other causes, though she occasionally still posted old photos with revisionist captions about her time as a mother. Madison's college plans had been put on hold during the legal battle, but with the case resolved, she made a surprising announcement over dinner one evening. I've decided to attend State University instead of going across the country, she told us, passing the salad bowl. They have an excellent pre-law program, and I can live on campus but still be close enough to come home on weekends. When I asked if the decision was because of what had happened with Rachel, she shook her head. Not exactly. I just realized during all this that family isn't something you run from to find yourself. It's the foundation that lets you become yourself. Her wisdom at 18 humbled me. Despite everything, or perhaps because of it, Madison had developed a maturity and compassion beyond her years. She had decided to channel her experiences into a legal career focused on family advocacy, turning her trauma into purpose. The twins processed the ordeal differently. Noah threw himself into academics with renewed intensity, as if academic achievement could create a shield against future uncertainty. Tyler's anger gradually transformed into determination on the soccer field, where he led his team to the state championships with a ferocity that sometimes concerned his coaches. We enrolled all four children in family therapy sessions, providing a safe space to express the complicated emotions surrounding Rachel's return and subsequent legal attack. The therapist, Dr. Martinez, specialized in adoption and blended family dynamic. What your children have experienced is a form of secondary abandonment, she explained during a parents-only session. The first abandonment was physical when Rachel left. This legal battle represented an emotional abandonment, putting her needs above theirs, showing willingness to disrupt their stability for her own purposes. These insights helped us navigate the children's varied reactions in the months that followed. Emma, who had regressed to clingy behavior during the court case, gradually regained her confidence with consistent reassurance. The nightmares diminished, though she still occasionally crawled into our bed after a bad dream. During one therapy session, Emma expressed her confusion about Rachel. I know she's my biological mom, but she feels like a stranger. Is that bad? Am I supposed to love her? Dr. Martinez gently explained that feelings can't be forced. You can respect the connection without pretending to feel something you don't. Your feelings might change over time, or they might not. Both are okay. Rachel attended the first few supervised visitations, bringing elaborate gifts and making grandiose promises about future relationships. But as the novelty wore off and the reality set in that she wouldn't gain control, her attendance became sporadic. By the 6-month mark, she was missing every other scheduled visit, echoing the inconsistency that had marked her earlier parenting. Her final visit came on Emma's 14th birthday. Rachel arrived with an expensive gaming system that we had already told her was inappropriate for Emma's age and interests. When Emma politely thanked her but explained she preferred art supplies, Rachel became agitated. "I'm your mother, I should know what you like," she snapped, causing Emma to shrink back against me. The visitation supervisor intervened, but the damage was done. Rachel left in tears, and we received legal notice the following week that she was voluntarily terminating her visitation rights. Her parting message, delivered through her attorney, was that she couldn't bear to see how Ashley had turned her children against her. The children's reactions to this final abandonment ranged from relief to renewed grief. Madison, now in her first year of college, processed it with characteristic insight. "She's running away again because being a real parent is hard. It's easier for her to blame you than face her own failures." Though Rachel had removed herself from their lives once more, we continued to approach the situation with honesty and compassion. We maintained the photo albums, answered questions truthfully, and never spoke of Rachel with bitterness despite the pain she had caused. Gradually, our family rhythm returned. The children's achievements continued to mark the passage of time. Madison's college dean's list, Noah's science fair victories, Tyler's athletic scholarships, Emma's art show ribbons. Brian and I celebrated our 7th wedding anniversary, marveling at the journey that had brought us together and the family we had forged through adversity. 1 year after the court case concluded, we attended Madison's high school graduation. She had completed her senior year with honors while taking college courses, graduating as valedictorian despite the turmoil of the custody battle. As she delivered her speech about resilience and chosen family, I spotted Rachel standing at the back of the auditorium, watching from a distance. Our eyes met briefly across the crowded space. There was no hostility in my heart anymore, just a profound sadness for what she had lost the opportunity to know these remarkable young people, to witness their daily growth, to be part of their triumphs and challenges. I nodded slightly in acknowledgement, and after a moment she returned the gesture before slipping out a side door. That evening, as we celebrated Madison's achievement with a backyard barbecue surrounded by friends and extended family, I found a moment of quiet reflection on our back porch. Emma found me there, sitting beside me with the easy comfort of a child secure in her relationship. "Mom," she said, leaning her head against my shoulder, "I wrote an essay for English class about what family means. Can I read it to you?" I nodded, and she pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "Family isn't made by blood or birth certificates," she read. "It's built in midnight fever checks and Band-Aid kisses. It's created in homework help and breakfast conversations. It's forged in showing up day after day, when it's easy and when it's hard. My mom didn't give birth to me, but she gave me something better. She gave me a home where I was chosen, wanted, and loved every single day." As tears blurred my vision, Emma continued, "Some people think biology is what makes a mother, but I know different. A mother is the person who teaches you to be brave when you're scared, who celebrates your victories no matter how small, who loves you at your worst, not just your best. By that definition, I have the best mom in the world, and nothing, no court, no genetics, no piece of paper can ever change that truth." Her words were the vindication I had never sought but profoundly needed. Through all the sleepless nights, financial struggles, and emotional challenges of raising these children, I had simply tried to give them what every child deserves: security, consistency, and unconditional love. In return, they had given me the greatest gift of all, the privilege of being called mom. As we rejoined the celebration, watching Madison laugh with her siblings, seeing Brian coaching Tyler on the perfect burger flip, observing Noah explaining some scientific concept to fascinated younger cousins, I realized that our family's strength came not from the absence of challenges but from how we had faced them together. The journey from that rainy night when 4 frightened children arrived at my door to this moment of hard-won peace had shaped all of us. It had taught us that family is not defined by circumstance but by choice, the daily choice to love, to forgive, to remain, to build something beautiful from broken pieces. What has your experience been with blended families or chosen family? Have you ever had to step up for someone when they couldn't do it themselves? Drop a comment below, like this video if our story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that family isn't always about biology. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, the family you build can be even stronger than the family you're born into.